Hey there, welcome back to True North Reviews. My name is Ryan, and today we're going to be counting down my picks for the top 5 most disappointing albums of 2018. These records are ones that I thought were a letdown, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the albums are actually bad. It's just that they didn't meet my expectations for one or several reasons. Possibly because of weaker deep cuts compared to the initial success of the lead-off singles, an awkward switch in musical style for the band or artist, or just because something was overhyped when the final product ended up being lackluster in my opinion. Kicking this off at number 5, we have Tranquility-based Hotel and Casino by Arctic Monkeys. And of course this project was panned by the fans of AM, the band's previous record, and for a somewhat logical reason. I think they were just expecting a safe sequel to that record, almost like a part 2. But as much as I'd like to think that the band didn't stick the landing with the hotel or lounge kind of sound, I'd like to appreciate the attempt to switch up the style at least. As Arctic Monkeys are a band that have always had the core garage rock sound to them, and it's because of this that it was more of a letdown in the way that the glitzy and showy vocal deliveries and rhythms came off as more pretentious and jarring than anything else. Don't get me wrong, there are a couple great tracks on here, namely 4 out of 5 and She Looks Like Fun, but outside of that, a lot of these songs sound the same and they're very sleepy. And as an outlook to the future, I don't want Arctic Monkeys to stop experimenting with this sound, but at the same time, I don't think I would be very disappointed if they completely switched it up for the next record either. At number 4, we have Sweetener by Ariana Grande. And yes, let the hate comments roll in, but remember, this is just my opinion. Now to set things straight, I am a big fan of Ariana Grande, and I still consider myself a fan even after this record in 2018. But it's the awkward collaboration with Pharrell Williams that is my biggest problem with this record. Between the novelty-like production decorations and the dumbed-down lyrics, half this project has lost its punch for me. Also in the past, Ariana's collaborations with Nicki Minaj have always been one of her strengths on her records. But on this album, the two teamed up for one of the worst singles of the year, plain and simple. It just feels like an insult to my ears, and the lyrics are not even remotely close to being insightful or even funny like Side to Side was. There are just way too many sore spots on this record, and it's no offense to Ariana's vocal performances, she sounds as great as ever. But between the awkward lyrics on more than half the songs, coupled with the weird production and the irritating features, this album kind of just falls through for me. Thankfully, Breathe In, No Tears Left to Cry, and God Is a Woman are all standouts, but singles, of course, cannot save an entire record from disappointment. The third most disappointing record of the year 2018 goes to Muse for Simulation Theory. A praiseworthy album for its aesthetic focus on 80s music with a futuristic twist. It's really cool to hear some of the odd synthesizers and the tripped out guitars. And it really felt like for once Muse weren't taking themselves too seriously, for the singles at least. But when this album dropped, there were just way too many oddly offensive songs, if that's the best way to put it. I mean, the band sure knows their way around a melody, but their attempts to excessively process the guitars and the synthesizers on tracks like Break It To Me and Propaganda end up being more awkward and unpleasant to hang on the ears. On the upside, the highlight of the album for me personally is the song Something Human, a track that fuses electronic and folk with the acoustic guitar in a pretty innovative way, I'd have to say. But with the risk they took here to get experimental between these specific genres, I think Simulation Theory ended up being more of a mess than they ever anticipated. And sadly, even when Matt and the gang weren't trying to be innovative, songs like Get Up and Fight and Blockades, they really came off as cliched and cheesy. Just never again, Muse, come on, I know you can do better. You've put out songs like Knights of Sidonia and Supermassive Black Hole. You can just do better. At number 2, we have 3 Days Grace and their record Outsider. Of course, this artist is one of the most revered Canadian rock bands since their rise to fame in the early 2000s. And they've seen no shortage of hits, even with the departure of their lead singer Adam Gontier with their previous record, Human. But even with new blood, Matt Walst, I feel like the magic is kind of worn off for this new record, making Human feel more like a fluke, as if the band were previously sitting on the material prior to Adam's leave. And yes, even though Adam's voice is irreplaceable, I feel like Matt has done a decent job of evolving the band's sound to somewhere new and different on the previous album. But unfortunately, with the new project Outsider, it hits on all the cliches of being an outsider that is neither genuine nor sincere. It's even compounded by the fact that a lot of these songs are trying to connect with a crowd, be it with the millennial whoop or the overly dramatic instrumentation. A lot of this project feels like a less impressive copy of their older discography. Staying positive though, I hope 3 Days Grace can turn it around for their next record, but sadly for now it feels like their best material is in the rearview mirror. And my number 1 most disappointing album of the year hands down belongs to Joji's Ballads 1. It's hard to believe that at the beginning of 2018 I was excited for this record more than any other, and I was proud to say that, especially after hearing Slow Dancing in the Dark and even his collaboration with Ryan Hemsworth, Think About You. I was just really expecting more of the same kind of thing on the album. But the rest of this project unfortunately was very underwhelming, from the generic beats to the uninspired vocal performances. Really, and even when this album tries to switch up the generic production, we get purposely over-compressed audio on the intro cut, and it sounds just as bad as you would expect. The production is also grating on tracks like Why Am I Still in LA, where the dynamics of the instrumental are just way out of whack with the mumbled verse. In fact, that's another problem I have with this record. I can't even make out what Joji is saying for most of it. And sadly, even after the highlight of Slow Dancing in the Dark is out of the way, it's a quick descent into insanity, as the track listing just has terrible pacing and it's one horrific vocal performance after another. It honestly feels like Joji didn't even try to make another great song on this record, sadly, and maybe that was the plan overall, just to make a crappy record, just to have the lead single stick out the most. To make matters worse, even Trippie Redd's feature on this record is mixed horrendously on his track Rest in Peace, sounding way too loud and repulsive against the dark and bland SoundCloud beat. For a record that tries to be gloomy and emotional, Joji's Ballad 1 also ends up being the most anticlimactic in quality, and it takes my top spot for the most disappointing record of the year. So that's it for the disappointing albums. Thanks for checking out this video. Leave a like and subscribe. Tell me some of your choices for the most underwhelming projects of the year, and I'll catch you in the next countdown. Around my body, you'll see some of the other videos you can check out in the meantime, and as always, have a rocking day.